Hi. Have you ever heard of the Stroop effect? It's the delay in our reaction time when we're presented with incongruent stimuli. If someone shows us a card that says orange but the color of the letters is blue, it takes us a while to say the color of the word. It says one thing but the color tells us something different. This same kind of thing happens when we read the Bible. The words say, this being is good, or this person is good, or this act is good. But if we stop to think, we know that we're being deceived. The words tell us one thing, but someone is working hard to cause us to consider the true meaning of the words. Cause us not to consider the true meaning of the words. Often in the Bible, a villain is even presented as a hero, or a hero is presented as a villain. And we tend to accept the attitude of the author of the text rather than look at the words themselves and the behavior of the characters and say, wait a second, this is all twisted. The story of Jacob and Esau is a perfect example of this. The God of Israel presents Jacob as the good guy and Esau as the bad one, but I'm here to tell you it simply is not so. Genesis 25:21-28 tells about the birth of these twins. Yahweh said the elder, Esau, would serve the younger. Now, if this ever happened, I don't know when. After Jacob treated Esau like dirt, cowardly little Jacob fled for his life from Esau. Yes, Esau's descendants were ruled over by Israel at times, but if Esau himself ever served Jacob, I don't know when it was. Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. So maybe Esau did much of the work of providing food, and in that way served Jacob. But most likely some Jacobite or Israelite just threw that whole serving prophecy in there later, because the Israelites like to enslave or otherwise mistreat the descendants of Esau. And it's always nice to make your God give you permission for such evil behavior. Anyway, Isaac, the father of the twins, loved Esau because he ate his venison. I kid you not, that's what it says. And Rebekah, the boy's mother, loved Jacob. Maybe that's because he was hanging around the tent all day with her. As the story goes, one day, when Esau came in from the field, Jacob was boiling some lentil stew. Esau was famished and at the point of fainting and asked for a bowl of the stew. As any brother would, Jacob denied his starving brother a bowl of food. I'm just kidding. No decent brother would do that. But that was evil Jacob for you. He actually told his own twin brother that he had to sell his birthright as the older son before he could have a bowl of stew. Can you imagine being that low of a person? Esau was starving, so he figured his birthright wasn't going to do him any good anyway if he died, and he agreed to sell it. Jacob caught him at a low moment and took advantage of it. He put a stumbling block in front of his own weakened brother. Romans 14:13 says not to put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in your brother's way. Now, the Bible says Esau despised his birthright. I don't know that I would agree, but even if he did, I think that should be fine. Why should an older son be singled out for special recognition, and especially when the boys were twins? What brother other than one like Jacob would want that kind of thing if his other siblings couldn't have it? If you were the oldest in your family, and maybe you are, would you think it was fair for you to get something special because of it? Wouldn't you feel bad about that? So yeah, I would despise that. It's totally unfair. But of course, Jacob, who wasn't even supposed to have it, coveted the birthright of Esau. Jacob was a self-centered little man, happy to cheat his brother out of his birthright, claiming it for a bowl of stew. And again, at a weak point in Esau's life. That's about as disgusting a thing as anyone could do to his brother. Then one day, many years later, Isaac told Esau he was old and figured he might be dying soon, and he commanded Esau to go out and get some venison, fix it up the savory way Isaac liked it, so Isaac could bless Esau. Now, Isaac didn't die. Many years later, after Jacob had all his children and he and Esau had reunited, Isaac finally died, so he really jumped the gun there. Unfortunately, horrible mother Rebekah was listening to the conversation Isaac had with Esau. So while Esau was gone, she told Jacob to bring her a baby goat, and she would fix it up and he could take it to Isaac. Of course, Jacob questioned this, saying that he wasn't hairy like Esau, but conniving Rebekah put goat hair on his arms and Esau's clothes on him. Now, Isaac was blind, not stupid, so he questioned why Esau had been able to procure and prepare the venison so quickly. And despicable Jacob lied and even used Yahweh to do it, said, "Your God, Yahweh, gave me success." Can you imagine being that wicked? You'd think Yahweh would strike Jacob dead, wouldn't you? But apparently Yahweh was sleeping or in the bathroom or something, because he didn't seem to notice that Esau's blessing was being stolen. Of course, we're supposed to think that Yahweh wanted Jacob to have the blessing and allowing all the deceit and trickery was Yahweh's way of making that happen. Yahweh never did care much for the truth anyway. Oh, but he does supposedly care about hierarchy. I've heard that all my life. We all have to stay in our place. Women in particular, of course, and also children. Everybody's supposed to know their place. In no way should a younger sibling usurp authority over an older one in that culture. However, in this instance, Yahweh apparently didn't care. The same thing happened, of course, with Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael was Abraham's firstborn. He deserved to be the special child if there was one. Now, you can say he was illegitimate, but then you're saying that your wonderful father Abraham committed fornication and adultery. Is that what you really want to say? Because if you say that, then you also have to say that a big bunch of Jacob's kids were illegitimate too. Only 7 of them, 6 sons and a daughter, belonged to Jacob's one true wife, Leah. Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher were all illegitimate. Now, Isaac also wondered about Jacob's voice and his lack of hair, but Jacob let him feel the goat hair, deceiving his poor blind father, taking advantage of his lack of good eyesight. Isaac was like, "Well, you have the voice of Jacob, but the hands of Esau, so I guess I'll bless you." I mean, why not, right? It's easy to make your voice sound like your brother's, but very difficult to cover your arms with hair. At least that seems to be crazy Isaac's thinking. Okay, maybe Isaac was stupid, I don't know. Now, this blessing was that Jacob would be rich. His brother would bow to him, and those who blessed him would be blessed, and those who cursed him would be cursed. It was materialistic and heady stuff, just the power to be top dog in the world. And it was basically calling down curses on people. You know, not turning the other cheek or returning good for evil, as the New Testament says to do. Apparently at that time, Yahweh wasn't into that sort of thing. If somebody cursed you, you were supposed to want them cursed in return. Who knew the never-changing God could change right and wrong that much? Anyway, it wasn't like this blessing was some spiritual honor Jacob craved. He wasn't thinking about how the Messiah would come through him. No, he coveted power and money, just like a lot of people do. He wasn't somebody we should look up to or respect in any way. And even if he did consider the spiritual aspects, it didn't give him the right to lie and steal to get it, did it? Did it? Answer me. Is it okay to lie and steal and mistreat your brother and deceive your poor blind father in order to receive blessings, either spiritual ones or material ones? Just think about this for a minute. Again, Esau was the firstborn. Esau should have been the chosen one. Esau should have been the ancestor of Jesus. Yahweh did not make this happen either. It was Rebekah and Jacob who did it. But Christians are fine with it. Remember in my most recent video when I talked about how Judas betrayed Jesus and it had to be done? Christians view that act on Judas's part as evil. But a woman and her son lie and deceive the woman's husband and other son and steal from the son. And Christians are like, "Oh yeah, that's good. That needed to happen." You can't have it both ways, y'all. When all this blessing of Jacob was finished, Esau came in and asked for the blessing. Of course, Isaac was upset, but said to Esau, "Your brother came with deceit and has taken away your blessing." I don't know how those blessings or spells or charms or whatever they were worked, but apparently once you called down the magic power, you couldn't petition Yahweh to change it. Esau said Jacob was rightly called Jacob because he had supplanted or deceived Esau twice, first taking his birthright and now his blessing. The name Jacob means supplanter or deceiver, and Esau called it right. Isaac told Esau he had made Jacob his Lord, but that Esau would eventually break free of him. Naturally, Esau was livid about this whole scenario. He said in his own heart that once the mourning for his father was done, not that his father was dying, he was going to kill Jacob. Some might think Esau was evil to think this way, but then these same people think this blessing of cursing those who curse you is a good thing to have. Anyway, this was just a heat-of-the-moment reaction Esau had. And who wouldn't feel this way? The blessing was supposed to be his by divine right. His father wanted to give it to him. He had been out hunting, captured a deer, brought it home, cut it up, cooked it to please his father, and was probably worn out. But he had the joy of expecting a blessing from his supposedly dying father. He was looking forward to that. And honestly, Yahweh should have made sure it happened. Except, he hated Esau. In fact, Yahweh said he laid Esau's mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness. That's how much he hated Esau. Christians like to say, oh, no. Yahweh didn't hate Esau. He just loved Esau less. Well, laying somebody's heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness is hate, y'all. And what good father loves one child less anyway? Of course, Esau discovered that his twin brother had totally betrayed him, had lied to their father, had gone against the cultural norm that was important to their family, and made a mockery of it. And all he ever did about it was say in his heart that he'd kill him. Do you remember the story in the New Testament about the two brothers who were told to go to work in the fields of their father? The first said he wouldn't go, but repented and went. The second said he would go, but didn't. Which obeyed the father? The first, right? He actually did some. Saying some, especially in your heart, is not doing it. Well, somehow somebody told Rebekah what Esau said in his heart. Maybe Yahweh snitched on him. Anyway, Rebekah sent Jacob packing to her brother Laban, thinking that eventually Esau would get over it and Jacob could return to her, hopefully with his first cousin as a wife. So being the coward that he was, Jacob ran away. And as far as we know, Rebekah never saw her son again. And maybe that's what she deserved for being such a horrible mother to Esau and causing her beloved son Jacob to lie and steal. Jacob went to his uncle Laban and fell in love with his first cousin Rachel. So he purchased Rachel by working 7 years for Laban, and she was supposed to become Jacob's property. But Laban tricked Jacob and presented him with Leah, the older sister, instead. Jacob agreed to work 7 more years to purchase Rachel also. Now, the Bible says Rachel was Jacob's wife, but as I said earlier, Leah was his only true wife. After all, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Eve and Maureen, right? And Jesus would never put up with polygamy. So Rachel was Jacob's mistress, I reckon. And later he took 2 more mistresses, the handmaids of Leah and Rachel. Having mistresses is what today we call fornication and even adultery, as I said previously regarding Abraham and his dalliance with Hagar. These girls, Bilhah and Zilpah, were just slaves, so I guess Jacob could have sex with them if he wanted. That's all good with Yahweh, right? They were his property after all. Later, Jacob had a bunch of kids by his wife and his 3 mistresses. He loved his mistress Rachel's boy, Joseph, more than the others, to the point that the other sons were jealous. Again with the stumbling block. Jacob seemed to do that sort of thing often. So his other sons were so jealous that they were willing to murder Joseph. Some of them were. And some were willing to sell him into slavery, which is what they did. This was the horrible father that Jacob was. He preferred one son so strongly that he caused his other sons to hate their brother and lost his favorite son and thought he was dead for many years. After having all of these kids by his wife Leah and his 3 mistresses, Jacob decided to go back home. So he asked Laban for what Laban owed him. But in the process of dividing up the animals, Jacob deceived Laban by casting a magic spell on the cattle. Back then, even when I was young, people thought that if you saw something when you were pregnant, it would mark your child. When I was pregnant with my first child, my mom insisted that I not go to church the night they had an aborted fetus in a jar, which they were showing us to prove that abortion is evil. I loved my mom and didn't want to worry her, so I didn't go. And to tell you the truth, since I believe the ridiculous story about the cattle, I figured it was better to play it safe. Anyway, Jacob did a little magic with the branches of spotted and speckled trees for the cows to look upon as they conceived, and caused the cattle belonging to Laban to be born from the weak cows, while the ones Laban had said were Jacob's would be the strong ones. And of course, because these people didn't know any better, they wrote a story that said this sneaky plan of Jacob's worked. This same passage says, the man Jacob increased exceedingly and had large flocks, maidservants and men servants, and camels and donkeys, as if we're to be in awe of Jacob because he was rich. But yeah, if you're a good thief and good deceiver, you can get rich, no honor there. And by the way, Laban's sons knew how Jacob had become rich. Genesis 3:1-2, Jacob, heard the words of Laban's sons, saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's. From that which was our father's has he gotten all his wealth. Jacob saw the expression on Laban's face, and lo, behold, it was not toward him as before. So being the evil man he was, Jacob had once again got himself in trouble and was going to have to go on the lam again. He told Leah and Rachel that their father had deceived him and changed his wages 10 times, and that Yahweh had taken Laban's cattle and given them to him. Of course, I guess it had to have been Yahweh, since some powerful being had to perform the hoodoo on the cattle, as we know they weren't marked by what they saw. The wife, Leah, and most special mistress, Rachel, said, That's fine. He sold us to you and used up all the money, and everything you have belongs to us and our kids, so let's hightail it out of here. Of course, pitiful little Jacob was still scared of Esau. I guess he didn't have a lot of faith that Yahweh would take care of him, even though Yahweh had told him he would if he went back home. Oh, Jacob of little faith. When Jacob saw Esau coming afar off, he presented all his herds and servants and his big family to Esau and then bowed down 7 times. Oops. Wasn't Esau supposed to be the one bowing to Jacob? Esau, being the kind-hearted soul that he was, ran to meet Jacob, embraced him, and fell on his neck. Esau asked about the drove of animals he'd seen, and Jacob said that was all that Yahweh had blessed him with, and he wanted to give it to Esau. Jacob was trying to bribe Esau into not murdering him. That's all Jacob knew. Give people things and they're happy. I guess he figured since he was so very much into material possessions, Esau was too. But Esau was like, I have enough, brother. Keep what you have for yourself. I love this. Jacob thought he was destroying Esau by taking what belonged to Esau, but Esau could take care of himself. He didn't have to steal to gain wealth the way Jacob always did, and he didn't have to depend on some old pagan god either. You do notice the difference between the greedy Jacob and the good and kind Esau, right? I mean, once it's been pointed out to you. Jacob was never satisfied. He was always wanting more and willing to get it by hook or by crook. Esau had worked hard and provided for himself, again presumably without the help of Yahweh, who hated him. And Esau was satisfied, or content with what he had, as the Bible says to be. Unlike his brother, Esau was a decent guy. Now let me ask you something. After hearing the tale of these 2 brothers, which would you assume a God would be pleased with? The lying, deceiving, conniving, thieving, and cowardly Jacob? Or the hard-working, gentle, forgiving, and loving Esau? We would think Esau, right? After all, he was by far the better man. But is that the view Yahweh had of this man? Romans 9:13 says, as it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. Come to think of it, why wouldn't that be the case? It's not like morality or goodness means anything to Yahweh. It's about who's willing to kiss his rear end. Hack those babies to pieces. Buy those human beings and treat them as property and bequeath them to your children. Oh, and beat them to within an inch of their lives, if you have a mind. It's all good. Just don't forget to say, oh, Yahweh, you're so fine, you blow my mind, hey, Yahweh. I could get over what Jacob did to Laban with his magic spell. Laban tricked him into having to buy a second girl, and it's not like it was buy one, get one free. Jacob worked 14 years to purchase his cousins, and 6 years for the cattle. And unless Jacob lied, which is highly possible, Laban changed his wages 10 times. Granted, Jacob deserved bad karma, but whatever. However, Jacob's lying to his father, who thought he was dying, so Jacob could steal from his brother and denying his own twin a bowl of lentil stew. Any man who could do that, I don't want near me. Do you? Mercy, if he did that to his brothers, what would he do to you and me? I have 4 sisters. I cannot, in the darkest recesses of my heart, fathom ever denying one of my sisters a bowl of lentils if she were super hungry, or even if she just wanted a bowl because she likes to eat. And she could have a second bowl too. But how about you? Do you see some redeeming qualities in Jacob or horrible qualities in Esau that should cause God to love Jacob and hate Esau? Yahweh's supposed to be no respecter of persons, but that's all I see here. He was no better at loving both boys than Isaac and Rebekah were. And by the way, I have no respect for those two either. I hope you see these brothers as I do. Jacob as the evil twin and Esau as the good one who shines as a hard worker with a forgiving heart. And again, Esau was also content with what he had and didn't seek more than his fair share in life, even when it was offered freely to him. Jacob stole from Esau, and Esau didn't even take what Jacob offered him, which was less than what Jacob actually owed him. Esau knew what Yahweh didn't know for many years. If somebody takes your coat, give him your cloak too. Esau was a really, really good person. Better than most Christians are today, because they're certainly not giving their car if someone takes them to court for their house. I know it's hard. The Bible presents Jacob as beloved of Yahweh. He's Israel. He's what it's all about. But that's the problem with the Bible. It twists ugly things and tries to make them beautiful. I remember an episode from The Cosby Show on which Bill Cosby taught his daughter Vanessa that she had Bill Cosby told his daughter Vanessa that she had presented her boyfriend as a steak on a garbage can lid. Well, the Bible presents dog poop upon a silver platter and tries to make it look appetizing. And sadly, many of us fall for it. And I'm not just talking about Jacob here. The whole thing is crap. The blood magic, the human sacrifice, the incest, the slavery, the murder of innocent babies, the putting of guilt for the deeds of the fathers upon the children, the death sentence for one mistake made by ignorant people. It's all disgusting. Fine for a story. I mean, I enjoyed watching Ozark and Game of Thrones, but I don't call them the good show, or praise their worthiness, or try to convince everybody around me to worship the blessed creators of these shows and admire the evil characters and act like anybody who refuses to do so is evil. Anyway, you know what else this means about Jacob? Yahweh may have loved Jacob, but Jacob hated Yahweh. Why do I say that? Yahweh said it himself. 1 John 4:20, if a man says, I love God and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who doesn't love his brother whom he has seen, how can he love God whom he has not seen? 1 John 2:11, but he who hates his brother is in the darkness and walks in the darkness and doesn't know where he's going because the darkness has blinded his eyes. 1 John 3:10, in this the children of God are revealed, and the children of the devil. Whoever doesn't do righteousness is not of God, neither is he who doesn't love his brother. Jacob did not love his brother. You can't love your brother and treat him the way Jacob treated Esau. Based on the passages above, Jacob was not a good or righteous person. I think we all should agree on that. Therefore, since he couldn't love Yahweh and also hate his brother, Jacob didn't love Yahweh, and Jacob walked in darkness rather than light. Sure, Jacob might have loved Yahweh in word and tongue, like the second son who said he'd go work in the fields, but didn't. But Jacob didn't love Yahweh in deed and truth, as the Bible requires, because Jacob hated his brother and committed evil acts. I think we can also agree, however, that Esau did not hate Jacob. So maybe Esau loved Yahweh, yet sadly, Yahweh hated him. I hope we humans can have a little more discernment than the God of Israel here. Let me be the first to say kudos to Esau. It's time he received some accolades for having integrity, compassion, love, and the milk of human kindness that is backstabbing, double-dealing, traitorous, covetous, lying, thieving, conniving, deceiving, evil brother Jacob/Israel lacked. And it's time to take off our dunce hats and take a good hard look at the book we have always thought presented a loving and merciful God, good and holy prophets and kings and apostles, and beautiful tales of love and morality and truth, and realize that none of what we thought the book was is true. The God is evil, the morality is despicable, the laws are heinous, and the stories are lies. Read the words. Don't be deceived by the Stroop effect. Don't look at the colors that are meant to confuse you. The words are bad. I promise you the words are bad. And if there is a God or spirit or energy or force that created everything, it's blasphemous what humans have turned it into. They've turned it into the very worst among us. They've turned it into something nobody should want to encounter, let alone worship. And no, Yahweh's ways are higher than our ways can fix this. You cannot do evil that good may come. Right, Christians? Right? Thank you all. Bye.